Got it.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, we are recording. I am Sorcha McCullough, and this class is on service animals in the SCA. It's a guide for handlers and event staff and anybody who's interested in the ins and outs of service animals and how they work with the SCA. I just had to put Loki down. Stop the belly rubs. And let me open the slide. Service animals in the SCA. The talking points are basically going to be what constitutes a service animal exactly, what about emotional support animals, what are some federal laws for service animals, how does this relate to the SCA, how to manage service animals at your event if you are an event steward, important things to know about service animals, and what we as handlers want you to know. What
should we be seeing your screen?
You should, but maybe I am not. Are you now?
No.
No. Let me pull up Zoom again. Silly wench.
It's okay.
Let's try that.
Yep. Now we're seeing it. Well, yeah. Okay. We're good.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. That was the slide over the basic talking points. What constitutes a service animal exactly is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is defined as an animal that has been individually trained to work or do tasks for an individual with a disability. The tasks performed by the animal must be directly related to the person's disability. Some of the conditions that count as a disability would be deafness or another hearing impairment, a visual impairment, a speech impairment, a mental disability or a physical disability, an intellectual or developmental disability, post-traumatic stress disorder, or any health impairment for which the person needs special ambulatory services or devices. This would include blood sugar detection, seizure detection, and physical assistance. In some cases, fetching medications or helping a person walk. The only service animals permitted under ADA law are dogs and miniature horses. There are no dog breed restrictions for service dogs. Emotional support, therapy, comfort, or companion animals are not considered service animals. And I make the clarification that there are no breed restrictions for service dogs. There is a breed restriction if the dog has any wolf in it, because they do not consider wolves to be dogs. So that's an important point to make. Miniature horses as service animals is kind of a new thing. And in addition to the provisions about service dogs, the department's ADA regulations have a separate provision about miniature horses that have been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. Mini horses generally range in height from about 24 to 34 inches, measured to the shoulders, and generally weigh between 70 and 100 pounds. Entities covered by the ADA must modify their policies to permit miniature horses where reasonable. The regulations set out 4 assessment factors to assist entities in determining whether mini horses can be accommodated in their facility. Those factors are whether the miniature horse is housebroken, whether the horse is under the owner's control, whether the facility can accommodate the miniature horse's type, size, and weight, and whether the miniature horse's presence will not compromise legitimate safety requirements necessary for the safe operation of that facility. One important point for miniature horses is that they are required to meet all required vaccinations and tests per state laws. This includes any testing required for horses when crossing state lines. So I was told by my local veterinarian that influenza, the Coggins test, all of that has to be followed, and kept up to date. And they have to be able to provide proof of tests. But then you have the subject of emotional support animals. The ADA does not cover ESAs, or emotional support animals. Those animals provide a sense of safety, companionship, and comfort to those with psychiatric or emotional disabilities or conditions. Although these animals often have therapeutic benefits, they are not specifically trained to do particular types of work for their owners. An event steward may allow ESAs in certain cases, but under the ADA, owners of public accommodations are not required to allow emotional support animals, only service animals that fit the definitions above. Psychiatric service dogs, however, are covered by the ADA. These are dogs that are trained to provide services such as responding to an owner's panic attack by initiating contact to comfort the owner, or alerting an owner who is exhibiting distress.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so a service animal typically wears some type of harness or some type of something that shows that they are a service animal. And you may be covering this later, so if you are, please just ask me to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
But with a psychiatric animal, how do we know that's what they're doing and that they are covered by ADA versus an ESA that is not?
That is going to be something I kind of cover here in just a few minutes. With psychiatric service dogs, the handler can still have gear with patches or some sort of, showing that of what specialty that dog does. And then also, as I'm going to cover, you can ask 2 questions as an event steward of the person with the dog or the animal, and that are covered under ADA law, to have them prove that the animal is a service animal.
Okay, very good. Cool. I look forward to seeing that in your presentation.
Okay. Some federal laws for service animals. Under the ADA, state and local governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that serve the public generally must allow service animals to accompany people with disabilities in all areas of the facility where the public is normally allowed to go. There is no ADA requirement for certification or identification showing that the animal is a service animal. And that is one of the harder sticking points with people with service animals, is that they do not have to have vests, patches, leashes, or any other kind of certification or identification on their animal to specify that it is a service dog. They can come to you and they can tell you, this is my service dog, Loki, who was just in my lap. But if I don't have his working vest on him, I am not legally required to have a working vest on him. Service animals, however, must obey local leash laws, with the exceptions of if a service animal cannot perform its task while on the leash, or if the handler cannot use a leash, harness, or tether due to their disability. However, the handler must have the animal under control, if not by leash, then by voice control, signals, or other effective means. And it is allowable for you to ask how they have the animal under control. If local laws require pet dogs to be licensed and registered, then service dogs must be as well. Local law requiring vaccinations for pets also applies to service animals, including miniature horses. This is strictly vaccination and registration purposes. For instance, the city of Wichita Falls requires a certain number of vaccinations for dogs and requires you to have the animal registered with the city. That is our local law. Service dogs have to follow the same laws as pets in that case. Examples of places where service animals might be excluded include but are not limited to places where food is prepared, They cannot generally be excluded from dining areas where food is present, but they cannot go in the kitchens. Churches, at the church's discretion, unless there is a state law requiring that church to have an open door policy. Private clubs at the club's discretion, and private homes at the homeowner's discretion. And as for how this relates to the SCA, we abide by all national, state, and local regulations regarding service animals. Service animals must always remain under the control of their handler and must be housebroken. A handler assumes all liability for their animals. They are not required to wear identification, including medallions or other gear. This was something that the corporate DEI officer mentioned to me, that comes from society policy. No additional fees may be levied against the handler of a service animal. No paperwork may be required from handlers on their service animal. And no mandatory pre-registration of service animals is allowed. This is SCA-specific policy. From my understanding, this was happening at events. They were requiring people to have vaccination records from their vet. They were requiring people to pre-register service animals for large events such as wars. And these are on the society policy.
I know at one time that whenever you would travel with your horse, you brought the proof of Coggins test and all of that other stuff. We don't have to do that anymore?
With the horses, I believe it's different because you have to be able to prove that the horse has passed the Coggins test. But I do not have to bring proof of rabies vaccinations for Loki to Gulf Wars. If he has his rabies tag, if he has his state-issued rabies tag, that is proof of vaccination.
Yeah, I know Gulf War used to be one where I had heard of people having to register, so that's interesting.
I personally do bring a copy of shot records with me on the off chance that there's an emergency and I have to take him to a vet. I want to have the vet be able to look at his shot records and see what he's had and what he's been vaccinated for and any kind of medications he's on, just as a cover myself kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, the rabies tag is supposed to be the proof of vaccinations. It has to be current and they have to be wearing it. But the SCA cannot require paperwork from handlers on their service animal.
Good to know.
And this one is how to manage service animals at your event. This is Bernie. This is Bernie Sanders. He's one of Onsteora's service dogs. We would like for you to be as welcoming and as inclusive as you would with any other member of the SCA. A service animal shouldn't put you on your guard or cause you undue stress. They are there to help that person enjoy their time at your event. But as an autocrat, you might want to know, what can I ask, what can't I ask about the service animal? Per the ADA, only 2 questions may be asked of the handler of a service animal. Is the animal a service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? These questions may only be asked if it is not readily apparent what the service the animal would be performing. Every endeavor should be made to ensure these questions are asked only once and only by the event steward or their designee, the head of the gate. No one may directly ask what the disability is, nor can anyone demand to see the animal perform the task. The answers to those 2 questions may be noted in some fashion. Part of the reason that they have put into policy that you cannot require paperwork is that the events were storing this information on the service animals to include the person's disability and what the animal had been trained to do, and that information was not being stored in a secure, protected location.
Yeah, that's a HIPAA violation.
Very big one, yes. Yes. So they've changed the policy as far as that goes. Do's and don'ts for service animals. Do not touch or engage with a service animal without permission from its handler. Teach your children to do the same. We understand kids are going to see dogs and miniature horses and want to pet them. And for a lot of people, with service animals, they expect that to happen and are prepared for that to happen with kids. Try to teach them that they are interfering with that animal's job. By distracting the animal, you are distracting it from its job, monitoring blood sugar, monitoring a seizure disorder, helping a blind person to walk across the field, listening for sounds for the hearing impaired. And you also do not want to offer food to a service animal. You are, again, distracting it. The animal may have a special diet, and the owner needs to have full control over the animal at all times. Do not ask questions about the handler's disability. They are entitled to privacy just as everyone else is. I, about a year and a half ago, went to a demo at Eldon Hills on Fort Sill. And I had Loki with me, and I had to explain all of this to the military police at the main gate who were taking in our IDs, and explain to them the 2 questions that were allowed, explain to them that they couldn't be questioning about disabilities, and had to educate them on that. And the last one is to speak to the handler about any issues with their animal. For example, if the animal is blocking a walkway and you need to pass, if the animal has made a mess in a spot that needs to be cleaned up, don't be afraid to approach the handler and ask them to take care of business. We want to have our animals accepted at an event just as much as we want ourselves to be accepted at an event. If there is a problem, for instance, if a service animal is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, the event steward or local seneschal or kingdom seneschal may request that the animal be removed from the premises. This removal is based on the evaluation of whether the animal is under control, appropriately behaved for public accommodation, and not an evaluation of whether or not the animal is a service animal. The handler must be allowed back onto the premises after making arrangements for their animal. Removals from site or refusals of entry should be documented carefully with reasoning for why access was denied, per SCA rules for removing someone from site. And important things to know, people with disabilities just want the same freedoms and enjoyments as able-bodied people. Having a service animal should not impede them in any way. You can help them achieve those goals by following a few simple steps. Allow them access to events without restrictions. Do not interfere with a service animal. By distracting it, you may be placing the person in harm's way. And educate others on proper service animal etiquette. And I belong to a group on Facebook with service animals. And I asked them, I said, what do you want people to know about service animals? And they told me, if you see an animal, always ask to engage with it before you pet it. Not all service animals are marked as such. Overall, people should not interact with animals they don't own without permission. You should always ask an owner before touching their animal, service animal or pet. When a person tells you there's an issue, take steps to deal with it. If a handler tells you they have been harassed or exposed to an aggressive animal, it does not matter if the person claims it's a service dog or a service animal. If it's acting disruptively or aggressively, you have every legal right and obligation to have it removed from sight immediately. Just pretend the animal isn't there unless it's without its owner, and then follow it. Also try to keep the comments to yourself. Several people have said they couldn't go 20 feet at a large event without someone either stopping or making comments about their dog. It gets really annoying and exhausting after a while. And might I suggest a little blurb in the event listings stating that working animals are there to be working. We have such a problem with snark in the SCA sometimes. We all have to be gently reminded to respect the privacy of the disabled person with the dog. Little children running up and petting a dog are sort of understandable, but a disabled person at the event might not really have the spoons to be offending people off the animal that is there to help them survive the event. And remember that people with service animals are no different than someone who requires a piece of medical equipment, such as a wheelchair or oxygen, to assist them. Treat them the same way you would treat any other SCA member. And with a little help from you, everyone will be able to enjoy your event. And if anybody has any questions.
Oh, I think that was really great. It's something that I actually have had to learn the hard way because I'm such a dog person that I would run up to people, and then I guess I just didn't really know that service animals were a thing. And when people would tell me, oh, they're working, or I'm like, oh, okay. So now I'm much more cognizant of it and know, you know, oh, I need to. And it's true, you should ask permission to pet any animal, whether it's a service animal or just someone's pet, because you never know how they're going to react to you.
That's also, it's a very big safety issue.
Yep. Yeah, if you just run up and start petting it, they don't know you. They might bite you. But no, that's all very good information.
And all of this information came directly from the ADA website and the SCA service animal policy, which can be found on SCA.org. And I believe it's under the DEI office. No, the Seneschal's office. Seneschal's office.
Mm-hmm. I know we had an issue at a Namron event at Gate dealing with, I don't know if it was remember if it was a service animal or just an animal. But so now they've said that no animals can be at Gate, like when the people are signing in. And I think that is related to service animals as well. I wonder if that's violating some kind of, because you're not letting the service dog be with the person they're there to protect.
That may be a case, because otherwise you're going to have to allow that person to have somebody sign them in.
Right.
They're not going to be able to actually sign themselves in.
Right.
I have been lucky enough to be there with Wes or with another member of my household so that I can go up and sign in at Gate, and they can hold Loki, 5 or 10 feet back from Gate.
Right.
But as I'm lucky enough to have somebody there to assist me signing in a gate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I need to ask about that.
yeah, for the handler that doesn't have somebody there with them, they have to have that animal with them, you know,
Right.
in Rafna's case with Bernie, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. My concern is that with too many people at gate, the animal might get stepped on or kicked because people have baskets and they're, you know, they're just all frazzled because they've been driving and whatever. I would feel very, very comfortable bringing a sign-in sheet to a person with their service animal, maybe 10, oh, sorry, I just jiggled my phone, maybe 10 feet away from the table so that
Mhm.
that animal is protected. You know,
that's a
I
good point
realize,
too.
you know, it's not necessarily calling that person out, but I would feel better taking care of that animal and, you know, trying to accommodate that person in that way. I don't know if that's, you know, an appropriate accommodation, but it would be safest for all involved.
I personally don't see that as being an unreasonable accommodation. And it would be something that we would definitely want to get into gate classes and seneschal classes to train people how to handle situations like that come up.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that would be an unreasonable accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another concern I have, and I know that this is kind of just, and I don't mean this to be rude, but it's kind of a trend right now, is that everyone has a quote social or emotional dog or emotional pet. I mean, we've got peacocks and God only knows what else out there. I understand that, yes, there are some very legitimate reasons why a person needs this, but I think a lot of people are taking advantage of it. Is there a way to separate that so that we are allowing those who do need those animals into the event with their support rather than just, well, I just didn't want to leave my dog at home, so I'm calling it my emotional support animal today?
When you set up your event, you check with your site as to what's going to be allowed and what's not.
Okay.
If the site allows for pets, then you have no problems. You put in your site flyer, pets welcome, under leash laws, you know, quote unquote. If the site says no pets, then you would put in your event flyer service animals only. And the person with the dog that comes up and they say, well, this is my service dog, Brownie, and you are allowed to ask the 2 questions
Mm-hmm.
of that person. They have to provide an appropriate response to fulfill those questions for you to kind of settle your nerves. The behavior of the animal at the site is going to matter. If Brownie is barking its head off all day long, if Brownie is defecating in walkways and they are not picking up after him, if Brownie becomes aggressive with other animals or other people on site, then Brownie needs to go.
Okay.
Whenever you put in your event flyer, service animals only, the only animals that can come on that site are going to be dogs and miniature horses. No cats, no peacocks, no snakes, no ferrets. I'm trying to think of all of the animals that I have seen at an event.
Mice.
Mice, miniature cows,
Wow.
goats, none of it. When you
Yeah.
say service animals, you are talking dogs and miniature horses, and that's it.
Okay.
But so Katya said something and I'm a little confused, so I just want to bring that back up and see if I'm on the right track. So she said that This is their emotional support dog. I thought ELS wasn't covered under ADA.
Emotional support animals is not covered under the ADA.
So if they say, this is my emotional support dog, you say, and there aren't
I'm
pets
sorry.
allowed at site, that animal
I'm
cannot
sorry,
come on site.
I'm sorry, you cannot bring that animal on site.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. If they tell you
It has
is
to
an
be a
emotional
medical
support animal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the difference. It has to be, if they tell you this is a service dog, then that animal is allowed on site. If they tell you this is my emotional support puppy because I have anxiety disorder, that animal is not allowed on site if that is a service animal only site.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so our
Thank you.
PTSD person that is considered a disability,
Yes.
whereas anxiety is not.
Mental illnesses can be considered as a disability. It depends on the dog and what task it has been trained to do. For instance,
Okay.
I don't mind doing this. I'm going to get a little personal. Okay.
Okay.
I have severe generalized anxiety and PTSD. Loki is my service dog. He has been task trained whenever I am having an issue, whenever I am having an anxiety attack, or whenever I am disassociating, to paw at me, and that helps to refocus my mental state, so to speak.
Okay.
He has also been trained to go to people nearby and try and get their attention to assist me if I'm having a problem. And he also has a pouch on his harness that carries my emergency medication.
Okay.
And those are the things that he has been task trained to do.
Right.
Okay, that's
so whenever
cool.
whenever
It's
I
very
come
cool.
to your event, you can ask me, is that a service dog? And I will tell you yes. And you can ask me, what is a task he has been trained to do? And I can tell you. He will paw at me if I start to disassociate or if I start to panic, and help me regain control of myself. He also carries my medication, and he has been trained to fetch assistance if needed.
Okay.
Somebody
Okay.
with an emotional support animal probably cannot give you that kind of answer.
No. It's just there because it makes them feel better.
Yeah.
They feel more comfortable with the animal there.
They have to be able to tell you what task the dog does.
Okay. Because that's kind of been where I've been stuck, is how do I know the difference between the two? So thank you very much for clarifying that. That really kind of solidifies it in my head. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. With psychiatric disorders, it is a lot harder. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more of a gray area kind of, because people don't see how a dog, other than providing emotional support, could help somebody with a psychiatric disorder. Mm-hmm. So it is more of a gray area in that case. But yeah, the person has to be able to tell you what task the dog can do. I don't have to make Loki do it on command for you so that you can see him do it.
Okay.
But I have to be able to tell you what he can do.
Yeah. So if you ask someone with the emotional support animal, they're not going to have an answer for that, most likely.
Most likely not. And if they come to you and they say, well, my dog is registered as an emotional support animal or a service dog, there is no national registry of service animals.
Okay.
They can pay $75 and they will get a sheet of paper and an ID card and a patch to put on a harness that will say registered service dog. There is no national service dog registry. That would be like asking you to register your wheelchair or your oxygen tank with the government.
Yeah.
What a
It's
scam.
That is a scam. That's
It
awful.
is. But people will
Wow.
go out and they will register their emotional support animals thinking that, well, with this ID card, this proves
Yeah.
that my animal is a service animal,
Right.
and it will gain them access to restaurants and hotels and events and other things with their animal.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good to know. Good to know. All right.
Anybody
Yes,
else
this
have
was very helpful.
questions?
Thank you for sharing this information.
Not
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah, very helpful.
Not a problem.
Absolutely.
I'm working with the corporate, the SCA corporate DEI officer, and we are going to put this together in a digitized training format, and it will be accessible to the Senechals and everybody through the SCA.org website.
That's
as far
awesome.
as my understanding goes, so that anybody who's going to be running an event or who will be a Senechal will be able to access it and get the information that they need for their event.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fantastic.
Oh, another quick question. Somewhere in your presentation, you mentioned that a single person should be asking them those two questions so that the handler isn't answering it 20 times for the person at the gate and the seneschal and the autocrat and the marshal in charge of wherever they are. Who would you recommend be that checkpoint person and confirms that information?
My suggestion is the autocrat or the highest ranking Seneschal on site.
Okay.
And I don't know about, I know a lot of groups have radios now at events so that they can communicate with each other staff-wise. If a service animal comes to a gate and I'm sitting at gate, I'm going to radio for the event steward to come to the gate so they can ask. And or I'm going to radio for a Seneschal to come to the gate so they can ask. That way, once they've signed into gate, they don't have to be asked again. And as a person who has a service dog, if I've answered the question at the gate to the event steward or the Seneschal or even just the head of gate, whoever the person asked was, then the next person who asks me might get the answer. But the next person who asks me is probably going to be told to go ask the head of gate or the Seneschal or the autocrat. And the next person who asks me is probably going to be told that they need to go ask somebody else. And so on and so forth down the line. But no, I would recommend the event steward or the highest ranking Seneschal on site.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Because that way they can also document the answers if needed, that this person has had the questions asked, they have answered them appropriately, we've let them on through, there's no issue.
Right.
Okay. Okay, here's another crazy question.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be appropriate to like put an armband or something on the animal, not necessarily on their arm, but like kind of like labeling children? We label who their parents are. Would it be appropriate to label the animal to say, we've asked the questions, this animal is approved, stop asking?
On one hand, I want to say yes, but on the other, that is kind of like painting somebody's wheelchair neon pink.
Yeah.
Okay.
And putting it out there that this person is disabled.
Draws more attention to it.
Draws more attention to that fact. I can tell you that Loki has information on him of how to find me if for some reason he got loose or I became incapacitated and he was out wandering around. A lot of the handlers will have that kind of information somewhere on the dog, a tag with a phone number and a name, much like the kids, a belt favor with the person's name on it or something like that. But as far as us tagging the dog to the handler, that would kind of be like signifying a way of notifying everybody around, hey, this person has a disability and we don't want to promote that kind of awareness.
Okay.
If you understand what I'm saying?
I do. It kind of, it dances around the line there.
It does.
So yeah, I understand it, which is why I wanted to ask the question, because it might be a way to kind of indicate to everyone else, leave this person alone. We've already talked to them. But then again, like you said, it does kind of send up a flag. Hey, this person has an issue, leave them alone, or, whatever. So I can definitely see, I understand your answer. Absolutely.
That's one reason why a lot of handlers do have their animals wear harnesses or patches or something along those lines. Loki has a couple of different tabards for different local groups that he wears. He's got one for Namron, he's got one for Eldern, and on his tabard, I have service dog written on the tabard, so that anybody who walks up, they'll go, oh, hey, that's a really cute Namron tabard. Oh, wait, he's a service dog. And, they'll make their appropriate distance, really cute dog, awesome tabard, 2 thumbs up.
But he's working.
Yeah. So a lot, that's one reason a lot of handlers do have gear that has service dog on it, so people can tell that it's not just like that big lug on the sofa behind me. That is not a service dog right now. That would be the 45-pound gypsy who is scratching her back on the couch. So she is not a service dog.
She says, I'm just a pet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being so open and sharing with us. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Absolutely. Me too. And I learned stuff too. So yay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Comments? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for teaching, Sorcha. And I will get the video posted, and everybody have a good rest of your night.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.